Podcast. I really want to just, first of all, thank you for coming on the show, Lisa. But we got Lisa Hough here with us. Thank you for being here. I'm very grateful to have you.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
It's really a pleasure. And for those that, may not know, Lisa, I want to just give a little brief intro about the magic that you have been curating around the world, Lisa. So for those that don't know, again, she's been a dedicated advocate for Bitcoin, not crypto, and is committed to bridging the gap between our amazing Bitcoin community and energy companies as a whole. So she's really seeing these catalysts of connection being an important way for us to create a widespread adoption, and this being a prominent role for security in national and global security. And I agree with this. Forbes has recently acknowledged Lisa as one of Bitcoin's most prominent voices, which I really want to just acknowledge that. That's amazing to hear. And Lisa engages with amazing institutions, public companies, university foundations, and substantial Bitcoin holdings. So thank you again for taking the time. I know you were recently at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville, and I'm excited to learn more about it. But first and foremost, I know our time is our most precious resource, and I just want to say thank you for taking time today to being with us.
No, I love it. Thank you. It's great to be with you and great to see you again. Really enjoyed meeting you in Madera when we were there earlier in the year.
Yeah, it was really nice to bridge that gap. And I remember observing the colors that you were always wearing. You're always wearing full colors, you're always full of light. And it's something that I always pay attention to whenever I'm anywhere is how people are expressing themselves without really needing to say anything. And I remember you having super colorful outfits on, really paying attention to that. So I think that that's always something that shows a lot about our inner world.
Interesting. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you noticing. Thank you. I don't remember what I
Yeah.
had on, but thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I really pay attention to the colors. I think that this is a huge way of communication because even though we didn't talk prior until like closer to the end of that event, I remember just seeing all the colors. And I think this is something that we do unconsciously, a lot of us, but I've just become extremely aware of it over the course of the years. So but without going back, talking about fashion, as much as I love it, I'm excited to discover a little bit more about you specifically, and then, go into the depths of the details of how you see energy and Bitcoin, private equity coming together. Share with you a little bit about what we're doing and how you see things coming together even more. But before I go into anything, I always ask all our guests is, we've always bridged this experience of our life into our why. And so I always find that through life, our experiences is what determine our why. And so I'm curious to know as to throughout the journey that you've been on, and I know you've had, a lot of experience in multiple different verticals. I'd love to get curious as to what gave you uh, this turning point of wanting to go deeper inside of energy, private equity, Bitcoin, and maybe it's something even before that that gave you this purpose, this yearning, this knowing, because you come from you're also extremely peaceful and tranquil in the knowing of what we're building as a community. It's like this centeredness that I can really appreciate, and I'm certain a lot of others do. So I'd love to know your why and your experience.
Well, thank you. And thank you for acknowledging that. I do hear from friends often that that when they're with me, they feel very calm, and that makes me feel great. Um, I will tell you that it's not always calm on the inside, though, right? It's a rough place out there in the great big world, and the only person that is qualified to take care of you is you. I think I found Bitcoin. I know I found Bitcoin through trying to figure out how to take care of myself. I was re-entering the workforce after not working for a period of time, and looking to, make some investments in the market, where I'd always had a, kind of a financial advisor who had made recommendations on my retirement account. And I kind of tumbled, as we say, down the rabbit hole of, in this space. But once I got really connected to Bitcoin, I realized that it was like the solve for kind of inner turmoil. In that I'd always felt like I don't know how I will afford to live my whole life. I don't know how I'll be able to protect myself. I think because I have seen family members, grow old, have health challenges. They didn't save enough money. And so, when you have the combination of a health challenge and not very much income, things can go desperately, terribly, horribly wrong. And so I've had this sort of turmoil inside that, there will not, that not that I would be in distress, but that I was like one day away from a distressful situation. So, like we're all kind of one day away from being homeless. And, I think our lives are, they really are precarious, and oftentimes things present that we don't expect at all. Life takes turns that we don't expect. And when I found Bitcoin and started understanding that, I didn't need anyone in my life except for Bitcoin, right? Like, obviously, I want my family and my friends around me, and I value and love them. But I didn't need a money manager. I didn't need any sort of special education, right? I don't have to have a bunch of letters after my name. There was nothing that I would lack if I just owned Bitcoin. And I think what I love most about that is that there's nothing anyone will lack if they just own Bitcoin, right? There's no person ever that needs to hire a financial advisor ever again. They cannot give you better advice than just buying Bitcoin and holding it. There is no better advice. There never will be any better advice. And so I loved that. I'm not married, right? So there's no one taking care of me but me, and I actually have family members that look to me for help and support, which I'm delighted to, that I can be of service, especially to my parents, who have done more for me than I deserved. So I think that's why I feel so connected to this space, is really just the ability to, my daughter often says, Mom, you speak in words that people think in. And so that's, for me, like my greatest mission is to be able to try to open a door and connect people to Bitcoin. So whether or not that's an energy company or a private equity group, or, a women's group, or my church group, right? Like, what lens can they open their eyes to Bitcoin with? How does that work? So that's why I leap out of bed in the morning. I love getting to talk to people about Bitcoin. I love it when people like you, who are so connected and have brilliant audiences, and you've poured so much effort into getting good messages out into the universe. Like, it's just a joy. It's a joy to work in this space.
You are extremely connected yourself, and I'm hearing, connection, family, faith, freedom. I'm hearing all of these underlying meaningful responsibilities that you've chosen to step into consciously. And it's really beautiful, because I do find, when I was in Madeira, just before we met, I don't know if you remember, but like I was really full front row, listening, reading, writing, taking notes, because the principles that guided me were the ones that I always knew that were going to bring me to something more meaningful. And although I knew of Bitcoin, I didn't know the principles that define Bitcoin. And I was there to really do my due diligence, to learn, to understand, to bring the fundamentals of these guided principles within me. And this is what I feel is really important that the community and Bitcoin specifically does, is it really focuses on what I would say like a big family. And I'm not saying everybody, is there for the same reasons. However, I do believe those that are really building the infrastructure and fundamentally curating the responsibility as a whole, whether it's between energy, private equity, and creating a new economic shift, are taking responsibility and stepping into a new layer of identity. And that's what I really felt in Madeira. And this was something that I sensed, or I sense even right now as you speak, that by stepping into that deeper root of connection, more of us can actually take responsibility in the way that we choose to drive our lives. So, what is it that within you and this feeling of family, of bringing people together? Because it's really community that allows. It's not like one person is outshining another. Everyone is shining together, and that's what I really noticed, is that there is no competition. Everyone is working together. People are not choosing to outshine another. It's like it doesn't feel like people are competing in the Bitcoin community. People are wanting to really serve and support alongside each other, which I've noticed in other communities, uh, in whichever way that has been, and maybe that probably was just a reflection of me. And at this point, it's like this is the vehicle that I feel that brings a whole new layer of consciousness to the world, but also brings an operating system for the people, by the people, to the people. So
Right,
I'd love,
exactly.
yeah. So I'd love to see what your worldview of that is, in terms not just U.S. or North America, but as a global economic shift.
Yeah. I mean, I think what kind of pops into my mind when you were saying those words were, it's like those kids' toys where, um, like the Jack in the Box or whatever, you wind it up and it springs out. Or if you've ever like opened a can of something and then all these kind of worms like spring out. But like I view that as a really positive, like all of these ideas can suddenly bubble up through what has been to the surface. And what I mean by that is that, if we live in a dollarized world, right? We have lived in a world that has been controlled by the dollar.
Right.
And money is an expression of our opinions, right? It's a way for us to communicate our wants to others. But if I live in a dollarized world, and I think I heard on stage the other day at the Bitcoin conference that in Africa there's something like 400 currencies, right? If there are 400 currencies there and countless others, how can we all communicate? And the answer, of course, obviously, is that we don't do a good job of communicating. There's always somebody trying to exert control over others by manipulating the money. And so I view Bitcoin as this language that is available to all people. It's as though we now have created, literally a language we can all speak. And if we can all speak a language, those snakes like coming out of the can, or those like worms coming out of the can, like in a vibrant, healthy, energetic way, like that energy being released is representative of people and their ideas. Because right now we have no way of knowing what what women in Iran are focused on, or what families in Cuba or Uzbekistan, or right, like I don't know anything about them. I don't know what their economy looks like. I don't know what they want to create. I don't know what they write. Like, we don't have any way of knowing this because we don't have great communication, even though you and I are sitting here streaming over, you know, devices that are undoubtedly expensive and complicated to make. We still haven't figured out how to let every voice in the world be heard. And with Bitcoin, you know, it's the only form of property or language that can be held by every person, you know, held or spoken by every person on earth, regardless of their rights. So, regardless of property rights, everyone can hold Bitcoin, regardless of their the right of free speech. Everyone can speak Bitcoin. And so, since we know that money is on one side of every single transaction on earth, if we unify the money, we can unify the people.
It's brilliant. And this comes back down to your principles, which is, you know, connection, faith, family, freedom, which is what's the driving. And so I always say the principles that guide us will be the ones that define us. And I'm also listening to the language, you know, the way that you're communicating is very fundamental. Is like we the language in which we exchange at will create a lot more economic prosperity for our connection, our family, our faith, our freedom. And so one thing I wanted to raise a curiosity about, because you talked about holding on or hodling. Is there a possibility for economic prosperity, just like the energy infrastructure of creating and building the energy infrastructure? Is there a possibility of that exchange, or instead of it like the Bitcoin to be more exchanged, so people can not hold on or hoard it or hold on for dear life, but actually exchange it so that people can use this language in terms of their decisions? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, definitely, definitely. And maybe we can dive into the energy piece in a minute, and I'll connect some dots over there.
Please.
Um, but I think, like, you know, just to maybe get ugly really fast.
Yeah.
You know, I was listening to an interview yesterday. It was a live space on Twitter, and somebody was saying, you know, oh well, Bitcoin won't be used as a, you know, unit of exchange because L1, you know, L2s aren't fleshed out, and there's this uncertainty and there's that uncertainty, and I just said, you know, okay, I'm sorry, respectfully, you know, Vladimir Putin is not sitting over there saying, I'm not going to use Bitcoin because the L2s aren't fleshed out. What he's probably saying to himself is, wow, I'm the second largest producer of natural gas in the world. And those people over there in that country with that wear red, white, and blue and celebrate the 4th of July, who are the number one producer of natural gas in the world, they're now telling me that I can't sell my own natural resource into the open market, and that I can't use their language of preference. I can't use the dollar. So we have sanctioned a country with an enormous amount of natural resources, and that sanctioning is a signal to every country on earth that you don't control your own resources, right? It's really our way of saying we control the Russian assets even when they're in the ground, because we're not going to let you communicate those resources to others because we think you're bad, whether or not they're bad or good, right? Like, I don't want to get into that, but the notion that another country should be controlled by the United States and should only be able to transact with their natural resources using our unit of account or unit of exchange is, I would say, just old fashioned, right? That maybe that's how it was done. It was done that way forever. But I see this development of the BRICS conglomerate, them, those other countries coming together to form their own basket of currencies so that they can trade amongst one another. I see that as just a mere stepping stone to the other side of the river, right? And on the other side of the river is Bitcoin, because there's no country on earth that should be taking foreign exchange risk or any sort of counterparty risk now that we have Bitcoin. And the ultimate flex in the world is freedom, and freedom is built with energy. Everything revolves around energy. And it's the reason why we go to war, and it's the reason why Bitcoin will stop wars. We cannot control other countries once they opt into Bitcoin. And so, when I hear people arguing about when Bitcoin's going to be mass adopted, I don't know. I do know that it just makes sense for Russia or the folks with all of the natural resources that are not owned by the U.S. It just makes sense for them to transact in Bitcoin. Right? Think about it. You could do, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars in 10 minutes virtually for free. I mean, I saw a great tweet the other day from Parker Lewis, who I worked with at Unchained, and he said, it was something like, setting aside that the U.S. government is selling Bitcoin, let's consider that they sold $2 billion worth of Bitcoin, on a Saturday night or whatever it was, for 66 cents, completely outside of the U.S. banking system. Right? Like, put all of that together. That's the power of Bitcoin, and that's why every nation on earth will end up using it. So, where I completely appreciate Donald Trump coming to the Bitcoin conference and throwing his support behind Bitcoin, RFK coming to the Bitcoin conference and expressing his deep knowledge and support for Bitcoin. They need Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't need them. We as a nation need Bitcoin because it is a means to protecting our energy, our onshore energy, and energy is at the root of national security. And also, play out some mathematical, look at the math over time. Like, maybe we fix our deficit. We certainly, I think I think it is the only way that we fix the horrifically decrepit infrastructure in the United States without burdening the taxpayers is through all of the new ways to monetize energy through Bitcoin mining and all of the new sources of energy that Bitcoin mining will bring to fore.
I love how you're bridging the old-fashioned system through bricks to Bitcoin, and then fundamentally taking it into energy. Because everything is energy. Everything is pure source energy, pure source consciousness. And we've been conditioned to think that energy is scarce, where in fact energy is infinitely abundant, which is what we're part of. And so it's interesting that our predecessors really wanted to control that component of energy and create that illusory story of scarcity versus the abundant component of what's possible and how we're capable and willing to come together to create this abundant source as a team. So this decentralized component of no more control and really bringing that energy together. I'm curious now to kind of bridge that now with the energy companies and private equity because, my hallucination is that based off of the abundance that's being stranded into through flare gas or waste streams, we're able to bridge that together now into capturing and creating heat and electricity to then power up miners that can fundamentally create a monetary, like you said, a monetized energy. So how are you, with your experience, recognizing that bridge of coming together to catalyze, some of these oil and gas companies where they would just, be inefficient and put it off into the universe, whereas now we can actually capture that and turn that into a monetizable, secure, decentralized asset.
Yeah. So, I used to work in the energy world, and I live in Houston, presumably the energy capital of the world. Although, Hurricane Beryl hit here a couple of weeks ago, and we still have traffic lights out today.
Hmm.
Um, but I was working. I wanted to work in Bitcoin, and so I started a consulting business several years ago, and I just started hitting up my friends and saying, can I come in and talk to your teams about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining? And my pitch was, you can hate Bitcoin, but did you know that Bitcoin will help you monetize every molecule? And they would say, well, tell me more. And so if you're a power generation company, often those generators who have, let's just review, who have coordinated capital through the best capital markets in the world, right here in the U.S. So they've gone into the capital markets, they've coordinated capital so that they could build infrastructure to provide a service for us. So those generators have natural gas plants. And, miraculously, when I turned on my ring light today, it came on. That started with a coordination of capital by someone. And so the idea that the person, the coordinator of capital or the company who has taken on the burden of this risk is not able to monetize, every molecule that is within their power, no pun intended, like that's crazy. And so I went to these companies and I said, look, like how much of the time are you actually having to pay to have excess power absorbed back into the grid rather than shutting down your power plants? Like if that's a number greater than zero, you should be mining Bitcoin. And they went, at first they went, oh, well, thanks for coming in, like not interested. Our stakeholders would never let us do that. And then a few months went by and we spoke again. And then like a year later, I saw them at a Bitcoin event and they came up to me and told me they were working with ERCOT to get permission to mine Bitcoin. That's happened with multiple power generation companies. But then you've got, there's a lot of conversation around flared gas, and there's people that are doing incredible things around flared gas, right? You've got Giga Energy, you've got Upstream Data, Crusoe. But there's also a world in which you have a pipeline to take your gas away, but it isn't necessarily as economic as it could be. So yesterday I was speaking to a company, they have assets in Kansas. And their assets, this gas goes into a pipeline that goes into Chicago, which, a lot of the times makes complete economic sense for them. That makes all their models happy. Everybody goes, yeah, this is great. But at times when the demand is low, they really aren't monetizing, and it's not as accretive as it could be. And what they're figuring out is that they might now take what is they could be paid $2 in the market for, or $3, um, in an MCF in the market for, and they can actually realize like $8 by mining Bitcoin with it. So you now have the ability to have economic dispatch of assets. So I'm going to look at the price in the pipeline, and if it is under whatever the threshold is for mining Bitcoin, like I'm going to mine Bitcoin. But when it gets to be hugely cold or hugely hot in Chicago, right? And the price spikes, like I can sell the gas into Chicago. But then there's this whole other world, who I don't think there's anyone better that talks about it than the team at Marathon, Fred Thiel specifically, if people will just Google some of his presentations that he's given recently. Where like he's made the comment that every building will have Bitcoin mining as a part of their mechanical plant. I wholly believe that, and plan on continuing to knock on the door at Gerald Hines, who's based here in Houston. They're the largest private developer in the world. I think that's right. Like all those buildings, waste heat from other processes. I met with an ice manufacturing company maybe a year ago, and they have a bunch of waste heat, and they're trying to figure out how to monetize it. I've heard people say that your car will be mining Bitcoin eventually, your toaster will be mining Bitcoin. Like, I don't know, but there's really smart people working on this. And if Bitcoin becomes the asset that we believe it will be, right? I believe it'll be millions and millions, if not tens of millions of dollars a coin. Like, we will be figuring out how to, I will be recycling. I will be going to the restaurant next door and picking up their cooking oil so that I can run Bitcoin miners, right? Like, we will be doing everything we can to scavenge everything on Earth that we can eke a molecule of energy out of. So all that to say, having these conversations with energy companies can really just be focused on what their bottom line is, and helping them see that, fine, you can be in Elizabeth Warren's camp and be in this constant state of scarcity. You can have a scarcity mindset, or you can join me over here in the land of abundance, and let's think about really harnessing the power of this beautiful earth and providing for all of the beautiful people that live here, and let the beautiful people surface their beautiful ideas and get paid for them. Like, there is that world out there. We can get there. Again, we've got to cross the river, so to speak, from here's how we used to do it on this side of the river, and now we're literally walking across water to the new side of the world. And the new side of the world is a land where energy is abundant, and people live in abundance, and people, more than that, can live without fear and dread, right? People can just live with hope and joy and have fun watching their kids run around and the summer, and dig into their schoolwork. And I don't know, I just see a world that just gets much better. Every place that touches Bitcoin, I feel like Bitcoin makes it better.
And it's really beautiful because you're taking responsibility now for what we get to create for our future generations, versus some of the choices that our predecessors have taken to actually take away from our future generations. And so this is something that I'm hearing too, is like really bridging that gap of saying, no, like, we're not wanting to repeat the same patterns that our ancestors have. Not blaming them, not like it's like Socrates had said, or Buckminster Fuller had said, it's not about breaking down the old, it's about building the new. And it's okay, we can have compassion to those experiences. We don't need to blame anybody. We can just say we'll take responsibility and we'll change the way that we think, so that as a result, we decide and commit to creating a world where we're really cultivating harmony. And this harmonious atmosphere and environment is what changes the opportunity to bridge energy, capital, and labor. So we manifest a prosperous economic ecosystem. And that is what I'm really excited about. You know, I'm really excited about manifesting that as a family, as a team, as a multiple different organizations where we're willing to really bridge that. And I'd love to get curious about the capital side because we just talked about the energy side. So now the capital side of private equity and communicating that this is like a major alternative investment that can be unified into helping them see from the traditional side of things that this can bridge into a really more again alternative investment that changes the nature of the marketplace. So I'd love to get curious as like how you're communicating this to private equity or how helping them see this picture because this is something that I think is really important to bridge the traditional capital side of things into this new monetary system.
Yeah. Well, so, just anecdotally, right? Like the private equity, there's two that I've spoken to recently, and those teams are focused on energy companies. And what they're finding is that they have teams coming to them saying, hey, Bitcoin mining, there's this thing over here, Bitcoin mining. And for the last several years, the private equity guys have not given the time of day to Bitcoin mining. And I know because I've met with those teams, right? Those teams have found me on LinkedIn or found me on Twitter or saw me at a conference somewhere. And they've reached out and I've sat down because those teams often don't know anything about Bitcoin. I mean, there are probably, I don't know, 10 breakfasts that I've had in the last year where, we go sit at this diner near my house and everybody just sits around the table and the guy that's at this smallish, energy company will just be like, yeah, but what about this? And what about it's like Bitcoin in a fire hose, right? It's just, you're just answering for all the FUD that's in the market because the signal that they hear, what's stirring in their brain is this ability to economically dispatch capital or to economically dispatch an asset. So they've caught the signal. It's like they just have to take a speed reading class on Bitcoin to ensure that before they go to the private equity group that backs them, that they've got their facts straight. And so, I've been doing that for 3 years, probably maybe 4 years. And now finally, the private equity teams are reaching out directly going, okay, I know I saw you a few years ago, blah, blah, blah. I ran into a woman that runs a private equity team that's here in Houston. I ran into her in a hotel in Chicago like 4 years ago. And she said, what are you doing? And I told her what I was doing. And it was like, oh, I mean, she reached out to me probably 3 months ago. She was like, okay, it's time for me to learn about Bitcoin. And I love it because I know her private equity backs several of these teams that I've mentioned that I've met with at the diner who are actually in the field, who are building out, small production assets. And now they're finally it's finally gone to private equity where private equity is like, maybe we should be looking at that, right? Like maybe this is accretive. Maybe this does help us get, eke every bit of value out of the capital that we've coordinated for this asset. And so I think that's why, when I look at the energy guys and Bitcoin mining, where I see the most activity is with the smaller production companies. And I may just have this totally wrong and be uninformed, but I don't think that the big ones are necessarily paying as much attention. I don't think it matters as much to them, right? Like if they're going to go out and raise $5 million or $50 million, if companies are going to go out and drill in a specific place, right? If they're going to launch into a new project, they just want to drill. They know how to do it. They know how to put those projects together. They're 100% comfortable. They know what the economics look like. They can go do that. But then Bitcoin mining is like a challenge to all of that. It's like, okay, I don't want to have to think about Bitcoin mining at this site. I just want to go put a hole in the ground and try and find resources. But the smaller guys, where there are production assets, maybe there's gathering systems or there's a compressor station. There are midstream assets, right? Those smaller teams are now looking at those going, you know what? Like, I think if I sold my gas to, even if it's to myself, right? If I set up Bitcoin mining within my own operation and I turn this $2 gas into $8 gas, like maybe we should be doing that. Maybe we should be partnering with a Bitcoin miner like Giga or Upstream or Crusoe, or like they're looking at it very carefully because they're starting to understand that those, realizing a difference between $2 and $6 or $8 gas is huge for them, right? And by the way, it's also just the way, right? They're all going to be doing it, so just get started, right? Like I don't understand. I had dinner with a founder of the largest offshore private offshore group, maybe like 6 months ago. And I said, it's not going to be too terribly long before you have drill ships next to your rigs out there. And you're going to be mining Bitcoin on a drill ship connected to your rig instead of putting that gas into the pipeline and sending it back to shore. And he was like, no, never. OSHA would never we're not doing that. I'm just putting it out there in the universe. Like, I do think there's a day, right? I absolutely think there's a day. And to Donald Trump's credit, I don't think he's correct. But he said he thinks all of the remaining Bitcoin should be mined in the United States. Like, I'm fully in favor. That's just not how Bitcoin works. But I love the sentiment of it because, and I will be serious here for a minute, because an economy is not strong unless you have onshore energy. And our forecasted energy production for the United States is in a very dire place. I mean, by 2050, it is projected that China will have 3 times more generation capacity than the United States. Right? Like, think about that, where we were. So that's 25 years from now. Think about where China was 25 years ago compared to the United States. Right? Where there is energy, there is wealth. Where there is energy, there is national security. I mean, national security is diplomacy. And it is, to me, fundamentally onshore energy production, or, homeland energy production. We must have it because it feeds kind of the third leg of the stool of national security, is a thriving economy. Right? We have to have a thriving economy so that you and I can, everybody can earn, have a job, earn a living. Now we've got a way to store our energy or store our wages. But you want to see successful companies. Successful companies mean successful states, right? Revenue from companies goes into state economies. That's good for everyone. Anyway, so I think that topic of, energy, Bitcoin, national security is something we should be giving much more consideration.
Well, and I also think, like, just to speak to the people, like the component of bringing this financial security, from this financial security, people then start to create that vitality, that financial vitality. And from that vitality, they start to create independence. And from that independence, it cultivates freedom, which then from that freedom, it creates absolute financial freedom. And so it's this opportunity where, as a result of us doing that in economic prosperity, from all of us taking responsibility from it, then the people get to really follow their dreams, create a life of full purpose and contribution and growth, versus thinking it's just about ego or holding on, or like uncertainty and fear, and it changes the way that people get to look at life. It really puts them into that place of peace and tranquility, so that they could serve more, do more, be more. Please.
Yeah, well, you made a great point. And when I think about what I sorry, I'm not phrasing this quite well, because where I'm trying to go is, what I love about Bitcoin is that it gives me the opportunity to think about what I want to think about. Right? Like, I don't have to wake up and fill my mind with all of the garbage narrative that the mainstream mafia pumps at us all the time. Right? And it gives you this ability to really consider the truth in every transaction, whether it's this interaction or a commercial interaction. If it's what is truth? It gives you your time back. And I think it's so incredible when I talk to Bitcoiners, and like, so what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I was thinking, I read Resistance Money, and then I just kind of took the rest of the day so that I could look at my notes and just think about it. And it's like, that is freedom, right? No one in Iran said, I just read the book Resistance Money and I took the rest of the day to think about it. Like, no one in Cuba ever said that, right? That is the American ideal. And that is what is, to me, incredibly hopeful about Bitcoin, because it gives you it fills me with hope, and it gives me so much of my time back.
My hallucination is that more people in those places have probably thought about that than we believe. And because they are curious as to finding solutions. And the thing is that we're probably, again, from my perspective, is that we may not be listening to them because of where they are located. And so by uh, cultivating Bitcoin, we may give them greater voice.
I
And
love
so
that.
this, yeah, and so I really wanted to share with you, at least, I really observed the way that you guys, you lady and the gentleman that you were on stage with, at on the panel for the energy infrastructure, and that whole conversation about really the energy infrastructure. And the final kind of distinction that you all made was, we have the tech, we have the systems, we have the vehicles, and what we're needing now is the curation and the innovation of the contracts. And so this really piqued my ears up, because, as you know, since Madeira, I've been really working behind the scenes and putting a lot of pieces together that I've seen that need to come together so that we can start to maximize as a community to bridge this energy infrastructure, private equity, and Bitcoin mining. So I'd love to uh, emphasize or create a hypothetical with you of what we have developed, and get your insight on it. So if that's okay. And this is also, I hallucinate that this is also going to be in benefit for our future generations, or anybody that may or may not want to look at the experience here in months' times or years' times or something like this. So I've been, as you know, I live in Alberta, in Edmonton, in Canada. And so I've been in the oil field in the past, and I really cultivated a lot of relationships over when I was growing, up. And I worked in the oil field as a welder, so I got to know a lot of people in the past. And when I went back to university to go to accounting and finance, a lot of those gentlemen had continued on and become foremen and things like this, and superintendents and so on and so forth. And now a lot of them are maybe project developers, engineers, and things like this. And so they've watched my journey, whether it was through accounting, and then going on deeper into my personal development journey. So when I discovered Bitcoin, I saw the pieces to come together. I was like, oh my goodness, this is why the whole reason my life happened the way it happened. And so I came back to Alberta and uh, I really started to reach out to a lot of these friends that I've developed these relationships with, because relationships are everything. And I really believe this at a fundamental responsibility. When we can cultivate great relationships, we can create anything. And so I reached out and I got to know some amazing engineers, some project developers, and I coordinated and I understood that they were really building opportunities where we can capture this waste stream gas and store energy. And then I was like, oh my goodness, well, what if we created and I met an amazing man at Madeira. What if we created also like a Bitcoin side outfit like of this? So the Bitcoin mining. And then what if we also then met with a couple people from my university time, in finance and created also a private equity kind of firm. So we really can bridge together the energy, the capital, and the infrastructure to start to build these relationships. So what what I did is really cultivate meaningful relationships. Ultimately, however, um, now we're able to really have these contracts with different, whether it's from 1.5 megawatt to 30 megawatt, uh, to capture these waste streams, turn them into heat and power, and then to mine Bitcoin. And so obviously I don't know how to do all of this. So I know how to build the relationships, because this is, I believe, where the ultimate opportunity comes, is when we start to merge businesses to create that harmonious environment so everybody is winning. So we did, capital partners, we did energy partners, and we did Bitcoin mining partners. And now it's about really making sure, because of being at the table with these energy companies that are pretty major, they're like public companies that many people would know the names of these companies. So now it's about really emphasizing to putting this together so as a community we can move forward. So I'm curious from your perspective, is what would you say would be the best next step of us bringing these innovative contracts as a community to different partners, private equity firms, or fundamentals? And I'm an open book, by the way. So if you want me to answer any questions, I'm not hiding anything. This is a full opportunity for all of us to learn, especially me. And so it's really about making sure that this is about benefiting the greater whole, and so that we can ultimately bridge what's possible with these major firms or major organizations on all different fronts.
Would you give more on what you mean by contracts?
Yeah, so basically, we are sitting at the table with, so basically we've created a minimum viable product, or creating a minimum viable product of capturing the waste stream.
Mm-hmm.
And so the opportunity from building and engineering the way to capture that, as well as bridging it with the Bitcoin mining, so that this could be also scalable in its way. So we're already at that place where, because the project developers and the partners, in terms of the engineers, they have done this before.
Great.
And so we're already sitting at the table, but they've never captured it now with Bitcoin miners.
Yeah. Okay. What's the energy source?
it's oil and gas, so it's like a power generation, CHP, uh, and we can actually sell the heat back to the company as well. They'll buy all of the heat, and because there's an excess amount of power, it's they can sell us all the power.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I welcome, right? I mean, this is the way. This when we hang up here today, I have 2 phone calls back to back with folks that are building out similar operations, and I think just in a very broad statement, this is what gets us to the other side of the river to energy abundance, because we're figuring out you are figuring out how to monetize every molecule, right? There will be no waste energy. uh, Bitcoin is the scavenger of all energy, right? It's like I loved when President Trump said, "You're going to have so much electricity, you're going to say no more electricity, President Trump." Like, I mean, I thought that was hilarious. There is no such thing as too much energy, and uh, when somebody has, maybe I'll give one example. The Warren Buffett has famously just been disparaging towards Bitcoin, and yet, um, why is that? And I told this story at the conference the other day. In 2021, Berkshire Hathaway Energy came to the state of Texas and said, gosh, we're going to save you from another one of these power outages where all these people died. We will build 10 50 megawatt peaker plants in Texas for a guaranteed rate of return of 9.3% on our money. So we will front the capital, we will build these peaker plants, and you will give us 9.3% rate of return on these assets. Well, while I guess that's a generous offer, here in the state of Texas, we're deregulated, and which means that power prices are market driven. And also, his 500 megawatts that he was, offering us, it was essentially the same 500 megawatts, same scale as the Bitcoin mining plant that was built in Rockdale, Texas, by a public Bitcoin mining company who went out into the capital markets in the great, United States of America and borrowed the money and assumed all of the risk in order to build out the infrastructure. And so, it is within their right to try to monetize on that investment. That was of no burden to me, the ratepayer in Texas, whereas Warren Buffett's project would have cost me, the single ratepayer, right? Like I live in a house, so the ratepayer in a house, it would have been like $1 something a month. Would have been a line item. The nail salon across the street in the strip center, theirs would have been like $8 or $9 or $10 a month. The Coca-Cola bottling plant that's on the freeway 2 miles from my house, theirs would have been a couple of $100 a month. It was like insurance against another power blackout. Why should I carry the burden of that so that Berkshire Hathaway can make 9.3% on their money when America has Bitcoin miners who are willing to go in and coordinate capital, right? They're willing to go in and raise money or borrow money in order to build out infrastructure, and they take on all of the operational risk. No burden at all to me, and it's the same 500 megawatts. So when Texas needs power, those miners shut off, right? Which is essentially putting 500 megawatts back onto the ERCOT grid. That's exactly the same number of megawatts as Warren Buffett proposed. So to circle back to you, what you're basically trying to do is utilize effectively the capital markets within the current system so that you can monetize energy, and we no longer have to have the discussion that there's not enough energy. You're literally looking at the creation of an asset that um, essentially provides for all of us. I mean, I sort of look at the Bitcoin miners like they're the security guards of our money. They're out there coordinating capital so that those blocks can be made, and they're, along with the nodes, protecting our monetary system. They're enforcing the rules of the new system. So, there are many groups, and really everyone should be looking at every bit of energy that's out there and trying to figure out how to mine Bitcoin, right? Like, I hope Elon is trying to figure out how to put a Bitcoin miner in a Tesla.
Yeah.
And we certainly see it in the solar and the in the renewables markets, where those projects are only funded because of the incentives which the taxpayer, the ratepayer, ends up paying for. So Bitcoin miners are a way to way to amp up, harness the power of the earth directly for the benefit of the citizens of the earth. It's just a beautiful, virtuous cycle.
And it creates that circular economy that we've always heard about, but we never really quite understood how it happens.
Definitely. No, I'm happy to talk about your project. I mean, if you want to get in the weeds, happy to help in any way I can. So
I really would love to actually invite and see if there's a way that we can spend more time, or maybe invite you to being one of our advisors, so that if you're open to it, because I feel, based off of your awareness and knowledge, that you can also educate some of the people that I deal with in terms of private equity on the alternate investment side, in the importance of what we're doing, so that as a result, there is, as we're raising capital for some of these major projects, so that there is less hesitancy and more of a clear opportunity that they're seeing. And then also on the energy side, so that they are also recognizing the importance of offsetting their risk, because they are actually bringing their bottom line to a whole new standard of opportunity. And then, I mean, the Bitcoin miners, they already know what the benefit is. It's really helping the energy companies and the private equity guys from the traditional side of things, for them to understand the scope in an even more meaningful way, because it's for you to come in with your knowledge and wisdom to share that, and then you've done this multiple hundreds of times, versus me needing to do my best to illustrate that innovation. You've already applied it and shared that. So I just want to invite that conversation as we continue to bring this into application. And as we're really preparing to raise funds, like, it's amazing, because whether we communicate with our CFOs that are from the traditional side of things, or we bring in a CFO from the Bitcoin side of things, having that conversation, that language, to make sense to everybody, so it's very grounded in its approach and feasible in the logic, so that it's not an idea anymore. It's an implemented action step that people can feel safe and secure, and also step into that layer of abundance.
yes, definitely. Well, thank you. Yeah, I would definitely love the opportunity. I will say, I think that the work the work should get easier. We had two presidential candidates stand on stage in Nashville and say that they were going to add Bitcoin to, to the U.S. balance sheet. That they are supportive of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. So hopefully our work just got a little bit easier, and we're not just the crazy people, which, I think that for the last several years, we've been the crazy ones. Nothing has changed other than their perception of Bitcoin. I had dinner with a fund, an advisor to a huge university foundation on Monday night, and he had called and he said, "Oh my gosh," he was like, "Wow, I could hear the ruckus from Nashville all the way in Houston. Wow, I mean, you had Trump there, and let's have dinner. You have to tell me what went down." And I said, "So, are any of your clients curious about Bitcoin?" I ask him every time I see him. I have dinner with him probably once a month. And I said, have any of your clients been asking you? And he said, "Well, so much has changed." And I said, actually, I think it's really just your perception. But okay, I'll give it to you that a lot's changed. I mean, yes, we have the ETFs. Yes, we have presidential candidates acknowledging it. Yeah, okay, yes, I give it to you. A lot's changed. But you and I know really nothing has changed other than their perception. We've been on the right page all along. Like we've had the power all along.
Our intuition has been guiding us, and this is really beautiful to observe that our intuition has always been right, and that to trust in ourselves. And the more people that see this as a responsibility of trusting in themselves and to continue to follow that capacity, that as a result they can actually cultivate even more freedom and even more opportunity for others that continue to pave the way.
Yes.
Lisa, really want to acknowledge and thank you for the commitment that you have devoted yourself to for the past number of years, 5, 6, 10, 20 years. I'm certain that you've been on a path of really curating the certainty within yourself. And we all know that so many times in society, the external world tries to dictate our standards. And it's so important for us to do that internal structure of self-knowing to create those outstanding standards so we can walk into these environments and create absolute certainty. And I really see and honor the work that you do, because I know from my own experience that it can be challenging when people tell you that you're crazy or you don't know what you're doing, or this is uncertain. So I imagine again that this has been some of the hurdles that we've had the pleasure of going through, but it also then creates a lot more strength within us. So thank you for being you. And I'm really grateful for your willingness to serve and support alongside. And I'm excited to go deeper in the projects and what we're doing.
Thanks. Well, I love that you just the way that you just expressed that. I wrote this book, unpublished, but I wrote this guide for my daughter. I started it when she was 5. I had this feeling that I would die before she was old enough for me to tell her everything I wanted her to know. But somewhere on the list, there's kind of like 130 little bumper sticker wisdom things. Is the statement that the whole world is trying to tell you who you are and who to be, but it's up to us to decide. Like the power is within us. So it's just it literally is as easy as choosing to do the right thing. And a lot of my time in Bitcoin, I don't dedicate. I don't like go out and just actively um, seek to mentor, but I think I have the advantage over most everyone in Bitcoin in that I'm much older than they are, and I've had multiple careers. But you can never go wrong if you seek to be of service, right? If you're trying to come work in Bitcoin, or if you're trying to, um, become a more valuable member of the Bitcoin community, just seek to be of service to others. There are so many ways to do it, and to me, it's the most. I feel so privileged to get to know what people like you like to get to know what you're working on, what you're trying to build. Right? You guys are builders. You are doers, and it's such a privilege to get a little glimpse of what you're working on. And thank you for doing your podcast. This is cannot be easy. Although you make it look easy. So thank you for inviting me, and it's great to see you again. Hope to see you soon.
Likewise, I wanted to ask you if anybody wants to know more about where you are, how to connect with you, how to know more about the magic that you're doing, if they need some advice, advisory, support, or in their projects, or what they can do to reach out to connect with you, so that people can directly connect. Where's the
Yeah,
best way to find?
I have a website. It's lisahuff.io. Also, you can send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can send me a message on Twitter. I really aim to respond to all of them. So if I don't respond immediately, like send me another one. But I think I'm really good now. I think I have a system now at responding. But happy to set up a 15-minute call with anybody that asks for any reason. And those have led to incredible conversations. So please reach out. Um, like I said, it's the greatest privilege to learn what other people are working on and to see other people succeed.
You're amazing.
You're
Last
amazing.
question before we go is or before I hit stop on recording. But the last question I have is, if you had 3 days left to live, what would you do?
Left to live. Oh, I would go park myself by the ocean somewhere, or um, I don't know, go find some garden to pick and clean up a garden, do all the weeding in a garden. Like, I like to find places. I know God is everywhere, but I
Mm.
feel God more intensely when I'm in nature somewhere. And so I've always had a big flower garden, and have been the one that's hauled all the dirt around in the wheelbarrow. And, um, I like cut my own grass, and like, I do it because I don't want to pay for a gym. But really, like, I do it because I just feel so at peace, and like he's right there with me, and it just recharges my batteries. So, um, anyway, probably one of those two things. I find my daughter, obviously, my twin.
I love it. I love it. Honestly, thank you so much again, Lisa, and don't go anywhere.